Okay, welcome. Welcome to our 11 Days of Global Unity Summit panel on women and their allies. And we call it Supporting Women for a World That Works for All. We're excited to have with us Sandy Hart, Antoinette Rootsdaughter Hall, Jumana Risk, and Luigi Bartolomeo. And my co-host for today is Karen Palmer. My name is Rick Ulfik, and I am founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. And I'm the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity with my dear friend, Troy Lush. We're in our 17th year, our 17th anniversary doing this. And I want to thank Jim Garrison and Rick Buckley, along with Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising, for broadcasting all of the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit panels. You can find out about the 11 Days broadcasts and events by going to we.net. And we invite you to collaborate with us as a volunteer or as an organization partner as well, since these 11 campaigns go all year long, not just during 11 Days of Global Unity in September. You can collaborate with us on any of these campaigns at any time during the year. And just go to we.net and you'll see how to do that. So before we get started, I want to express my extreme sadness and distress hearing testimony about how many young gymnastic women athletes were ignored when giving their evidence to the FBI and other authorities about being sexually assaulted, and that ignoring them allowed more than 100 other girls to be assaulted in the coming years. The numbers are probably much higher than that, but it's at least 100 more. So I'm just thinking that maybe we can talk about what needs to change as we are discussing supporting women for a world that works for all. Okay, let's bring in my co-host for today. Karen Palmer is a global kindness leader and a live stream social media expert who co-produces several popular online talk shows. She is a best-selling author and she is coordinator of We the World's campaign for women. You can find her at globalkindnesstv.org. Welcome to the broadcast, Karen Palmer, and please set the context for today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. It's such an important conversation that you just brought up, and I'm excited that we will be in this wonderful roundtable of brilliant, brilliant women and allies that will be discussing how do we have a world that works for all of us, and how do we let people have their voice heard, especially after there's been assault and violence. We need to create a space where people feel safe to be able to speak about whatever is concerning their feelings or their emotions. This is why I'm so passionate about this beautiful campaign of women and allies and families, because we need each other and we really do see that that's what this is all about. So first I'm going to do a short little heart-brain coherence experience so that we can come into alignment with all of our hearts. So what we just do is we bring our hands to our heart and we start to slow down our breath. So we can take a breath that counts to the number 5 as you breathe in through your nose, and then slowly breathing out and feeling into that breath, knowing that we are all connected in this beautiful web of love. start to think about something that you're grateful for, something that you are very, very grateful for, and just allow that emotion to flow with your breath and to feel that connecting in the oneness and the unity of the web of love, where each strand is just as important as the other strand. There is no strand more important. That's what I love about the web of love. And I think that if we can continue to have these heart-brain coherence experiences, we will continue to see one another with equality, respect, and dignity. So I'm just going to bring us in real quick to have each of the panelists who will be in the roundtable just give a couple quick sentences about why they feel that it's important to have a world that works for all of us, and who they are in their experience of being that beautiful leader of speaking that. So I'll start with Antoinette. Antoinette, will you please share just a few minutes? Now, Antoinette and Luigi will be doing a presentation for us. So Antoinette, could you just give us just a little briefing about the work that you're doing already in the world, and how we are co-creating a world that works for all of us already?
Thank you so much, Karen. So my name is Antoinette Roots Data Hall. A Roots Data means a daughter of the roots, the foundation. And one of my goals and aims is to empower women all over the world, to let them know about their rightful place, not just from in history, but also moving toward in today's society. I have a group called Daughters of the Divine Mother, and which is for women, but I have a public page called Daughters of the Divine Mother. So that way we have our allies and our brothers and everybody else. So that way they can hear from our own selves, how we can sit there and make the world a better place. I'm also founder of a Stand Up for Justice, nonprofit social justice organization. And then I'm also a keyboardist for Pato Bantan, as well as my new album, Here Comes the Roots Data. Thank you.
Wonderful, Antoinette. I'm so excited. And you have a friend who's visiting here that's going to be doing a presentation with you, and that is Luigi. So Luigi, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you are living this beautiful mission?
Thank you. I'm a semi-retired architect and a sculptor, and I see sculpting as sort of my sacred expression. I try to incorporate spiritual layers into my work. My work will not be comprehended in a glance. You have to spend some time at it and study it, and like the layers of an onion, it will slowly reveal itself to you if you have the insight to see it. I consider that, and teaching, I consider teaching, of all the hats I wear, I consider myself teaching as the most sacred, put it that way. In terms of what I'm doing to make anything any better, I pray that God put in my path people to whom I can love, serve, and minister spontaneously and joyfully, and thereby hope to bear some of the fruits of the Spirit in my daily life as I share this with others. That's me.
That's beautiful, Luigi. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We also have Sandy Hart.
Hi, welcome everybody. It's really an honor to be here. I'm right now calling in from the occupied territory of the Paiute in southern Nevada. And when I'm not here, I'm on the occupied territory of the Tongva in Los Angeles County. And I am a grandmother, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and an aunt and a friend. And my work is predominantly around SARA, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope, or a women's interfaith organization that I birthed the morning of 9/11 with the intention to create a space, a safe space for women to be in circle with agreements of care and caregiving, with the sacred acknowledgement of one another's divine soul purpose. And what can we do to provide that space for creativity, love, trust to happen? And we do some wildly fun and creative projects at SARA, the General Congress of Women, the Goddess Files were birthed here. Compassionate California was birthed at SARA and officially just became the first compassionate state in the country, but I think it was actually the world. At least we were the first to go at it for the world. So I'm really proud of that, even though we handed it off because it grew bigger than us. Yeah. So imagine that, a state living in a condition of compassion, an entire state. And to answer your question, Karen, as quickly as I can, why is it important for women to be honored and respected and for a world that works for all? Well, that was the answer. Because when we honor women and when women are in circle, because the answers are always in circle, we create a world that works for everyone. Statistics prove it. So the facts are there. We just have to get a little uncomfortable. And what does that mean? And we can talk more about that later. So thank you. I'm really honored to be here. I love being in this space with you all.
It's such an honor to have you here, Sandy, and what a blessing. You've been with us through almost all the 11, all the 17 years that we've been doing this. You've been such an inspiration. And beautiful Jumana Risk from Peace Lights is also here with us. And I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself, Jumana. Thank you so much. You also have been with us since the beginning, so thank you so much.
You're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure to be here with you, Karen and Rick, and my amazing co-panelists. I'm really looking forward to this panel. My background is in theater and emotional education, life coaching, seminar, personal development seminars. And out of that experience, I founded Peace Lights, whose mission is to inspire and give the tools to regular people to become lights of peace, to make the world a better place. And we have a big emphasis on the feminine and the values of the feminine, and making a distinction of what they are and how to empower women or men to function in their feminine when that's appropriate and when that helps, so that we can actually rebalance these millenniums of patriarchy that have become often toxic because there is no balance with the feminine. So I feel very moved and amazed that this is the time where the feminine is coming back, and where all of us and so many listening to us and so many around the world are making this into their mission, their work in the world, to give a voice, give a platform for the feminine. My work right now is in film, and I'll tell you more about that later. Lovely to be here.
Great. So Rick, would you like to introduce Antoinette and Luigi for their presentation?
Oh, certainly. Well, we now know a bit about Antoinette and Luigi, and I'm very excited to hear what they have in mind to present to us that relates to our theme of supporting women for a world that works for all. So go ahead. I think it's going to start with Luigi, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, go for it.
Okay.
Looking forward to this.
I'm going to lay down a backdrop of historical and even prehistorical traditions of the abject subjugation, degradation, and abuse of women at the hands of men. Now, some of the stuff is going to be difficult to hear, but I promise I will end on a hopeful note, and this will dovetail nicely into Antoinette's presentation to follow. And forgive me for reading this. The early human home was founded upon devoted mother love. The presence of a helpless baby determined the early differentiation of male and female activities. The woman had to maintain a settled residence where she could cultivate the soil. And from the earliest times, where woman was, has always been regarded as the home. Woman thus early became indispensable to the evolving social scheme. She was an essential partner in self-maintenance. She was a food provider, a beast of burden, and a companion who would stand great abuse without violent resentment. Pre-pastoral society was one of sex cooperation, but the spread of animal husbandry reduced women to the depths of social slavery. In earlier times, it was men's duty to secure the animal food and women's business to provide the vegetables. When man entered the pastoral era, women's dignity fell greatly. She must still toil to produce the vegetables, whereas the man need only go out to his herds to provide an abundance of animal food. Man thus became relatively independent of women. Throughout the entire pastoral age, women's status steadily declined. By the close of this era, she had become scarcely more than a human animal, consigned to work and bear offspring, much as the animals of the herd. The men of pastoral ages had great love for their cattle, all the more pity they could not have developed a deeper affection for their wives. All down through the ages, the taboos have operated to keep women strictly in her own field. Men has most selfishly chosen the more agreeable work, leaving the routine drudgery to woman. Man has always been ashamed to do woman's work, but woman has never shown any reluctance to doing man's work. Man's first form of trading was woman exchange. It long preceded horse trading, but never did the bartering sex slaves advance society. Such traffic was and still is a racial disgrace. Primitive man never hesitated to enslave his fellows, and woman was his first slave. Adultery was recognized as a form of stealing, an infringement on the husband's property rights. The Old Testament deals with women as property. The Quran teaches their inferiority. Primitive man was not jealous of his wife. He was just protecting his property. The reason for holding the wife to stricter sex standards was because her marital infidelity involved descent and inheritance. Woman was long denied full freedom in marriage, but the more intelligent women have always been able to circumvent this restriction by the clever exercise of their wits. Regardless of the antagonisms of these early pairs, the chances for survival were greatly improved by these male-female partnerships. A man and a woman cooperating are vastly superior to either two men or two women. This pairing of the sexes enhanced survival and was the very beginning of human society. Woman has always had to work, at least right up to modern times. The female has been a real producer. Man has usually chosen the easier path, and this inequality has existed throughout all of history. Women has always been a shrewd manager of men. She has always capitalized on man's stronger sex urge for her own interest and to her own advancement. By trading subtly upon her sex charms, she has often been able to exercise dominant power over man, even when held by him in abject slavery. Early woman was not to man a friend, a sweetheart, a lover, a partner, but rather a piece of property, a slave, and later on, an economic partner, plaything, and childbearer. Nonetheless, sex relations have always involved cooperation by women, and this has always given intelligent women considerable influence over their immediate standing. The sexes have had great difficulty in understanding each other. Man found it hard to understand woman, regarding her with strange mixture of ignorant mistrust and fearful fascination, if not outright suspicion and contempt. Many tribal and racial conditions relegate trouble to Eve, Pandora, or some other representative of womankind. The so-called modesty of women regarding their clothing and exposure of the body grew out of the deadly fear of being observed at the time of a menstrual period. To be thus detected was a grievous sin, a violation of a serious taboo. Under the mores of olden times, every woman from adolescence to the end of childbearing age was subjected to complete quarantine 1 full week each month. Everything she might touch, sit upon, or lie upon was defiled. It was long the custom to brutally beat a girl after each monthly period to drive the evil spirit out of her body. Even the Greeks held that menstruating woman was one of the three great causes of defilement, the other two being pork and garlic. A great advance was made when man was denied the right to kill his wife. It was also a forward step when women could own their own wedding gifts. Later on, she gained the legal right to own, control, and even dispose of property. Even among advanced peoples, man's attempt to protect women has always been a tacit assertion of superiority. The early Chinese and Greeks treated women better than did most surrounding peoples, but the Hebrews were exceedingly mistrustful of them, and women's estate is nearly hopeless under Mohammedanism. It was science, not religion, that really emancipated women. It was the modern factory which largely set her free from the confines of the home. Science had so changed the conditions of living that manpower was no longer so superior to woman power. In the ideals of pair marriage, women has finally won recognition, dignity, independence, equality, and education. Woman has always been the moral standard bearer and the spiritual leader of all mankind. The hand that rocks the cradle still fraternizes with destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Luigi. And thank you for giving us this historical context, because a lot of people don't actually realize, but some of the things that you've spoken about, especially with women being unclean during that 1 week of time, is actually still prevalent in today's society. It is very much happening in many cultures that they are not allowed to cook. They're not allowed to touch anything. They're just seen as unclean. And this is kind of like something that is so old, and it is now the 21st century. It is 2021. How are we going to sit there and lift people up beyond that? And so what I want to start with is that equality did not just begin. I always said that Christ was the first feminist, but actually Adam and Eve, when Adam had presented Eve, to the Garden of Eden and everything, he said, this is a co-partnership. We are co-rulers. Same thing like you see in some areas of society, like Selassie and his wife, they were co-rulers. Adam and Eve were co-rulers. When Christ came on the planet, he's like, all right, it's been hundreds of thousands of years since Adam and Eve. Obviously, they still hadn't figured out that same point of reference. So he had to bring it back again, the equality of men and women. Now, everybody knows back then, women were not allowed to pray with men, especially in that region. So it's like, and you still see this in today's society, that men and women have to pray separately. They could not sit down and pray together. Some cultures, men and women cannot sit down and eat together. They either serve. So it's like how he was able to sit there and break the change and try to instill within the people that men and women were equal under the eyes of God. It was Paul that sat there and turned it around through Christianity. He was not listening to what Jesus was saying the entire time, because Mary Magdalene was an apostle. She was a disciple. They had a women's corps that went out to sit there and continue on with the message. When Christ appeared, he appeared to her 3 times, and the guys still didn't believe her, and they weren't fearful. They sat there, showed up, and they turned up, and they were doing the works. And then we found out throughout history, it's like what happened to the Gospels of Mary. She was always who said that the kingdom of God is within you, not through the middleman or through somebody else. They had these things, but they turned out, and through history and through, man's subjugation of women, they took out those teachings. They hid the teachings. It was one guy who sat there and said, this can go in the Bible. This can't go in the Bible, but there was a lot of important teachings that was there. When you look at some of the documentaries about the early Christians, and you would see the 2 fingers up, which signified them as a teacher, as an instructor, as a preacher, as a priest. Those were women, but those followers of the guys came in there and blotted out their eyes, cut off their fingers. They're like, there's no way we're going to sit there and have these women educate and teach us on spirituality and different things. So I think that was like a great deprivation that has happened in the last 2,000 years, because if things had continued to go on the way that he had said things today, we would be in a much better place today. So thinking now about the historical context and how we're moving, it's like, let's go back to where it was originally, because the idea of the divine feminine, which is really on the rise, that's what I love about humanity rising, is that the divine feminine is on the rise, not just being recognized by women, but also men recognizing it as well too. But a lot of women just don't even understand or know. It's not something new. This is not new age stuff. She's always been here. It's in all the religions, from the Shekinah, the Shakti, and through Christianity, through Islam, through different things. There's always been a very powerful force from the mother, divine mother spirit that encompasses everybody, that this entire world is still a part of. And if we start to go back to some of the original teachings and just do a little bit more digging and then seeing how it reflects in today's society, then we wouldn't be in the situations of what we're seeing right now. Because if you look at Afghanistan, and everybody's been praying for the women of Afghanistan, but Afghanistan was not always like that. Remember, women were on equality as far as education, learning and science and intellect. And then they've stepped backwards, that people are having to escape so that way they can sit there and just get the education that they need. In order for empowerment of women, it really has to start with the women saying for themselves that they want more. That it's like, I deserve more. I deserve to be on an equal playing field, and I deserve to sit there and have the same equality and rights that is afforded to men. So we have such a long way to go, but we actually can do this when the guys step up and start lifting and supporting their women. My husband was very supportive of me, saying, Antoinette, it's time for you to do your own music, through your own music ministry, for you to start to shine the light for the rest of the world. You've always been there supportive of me. Let me try to support you as well, too. So from on the local level, from in the home level, it's like, guys, if you trust me, the more that you support your women, the more the women are going to sit there and support you at the same time, and through cooperation with each other. Next thing you know, so the world can be a beautiful place. It can be a place that we're moving towards into light and life when we actually actively, cooperatively start working together. And let's educate the youth and the children, let them understand what the equality is, because if we're not, then we're going to sit there and continuing to see the degradation of women, year after year, generation after generation. Thank you.
That sounds great. Shall we bring in Sandy Hart? What are you thinking, Sandy?
What am I thinking? Wow, thank you for that beautiful lesson on the historical root system of patriarchy. Luigi, for starting in the agrarian age, for Antoinette pointing out the divine feminine has been with us all along. She's just gone underground. Yet you can't keep a good girl down, can you? And this is what's really happening, that the time is right. And one thing I love about what you pointed out, Antoinette, is that you made me realize that we're the patterns of evolution that we are part of. And, let's go back before the agrarian age. Let's go back before we learned how to commoditize earth. And now it wasn't a sacred relationship with our planet. Now the matriarchal society or the egalitarian society that did exist before, where there was a world that worked for everyone. Before that, then we learned how in the agrarian age to till the soil and it becomes commerce, and the degradation of women begins. But we can't speak about this. We can't speak about the degradation of women without the degradation of our planet and our relationship. When you're talking about interrelated nature, we have to start with our relationship with our precious mother, and all that looking down to what we could take from her. We weren't looking up and dreaming, and we weren't being creative. We weren't being in that divine feminine where solutions come in circle. And we see that the pattern spirals or it circles, but now we're seeing it spiral. I said it circles, but now we're seeing it spiral because perhaps it's the alignment of the cosmos. I'm not here to talk about that because I'm not an expert, but we know that the divine feminine, that we know the age of Aquarius is among us. We do not need it. Everybody listening to this now, they're listening because they're already part of our tribe and they know this. They know this to be true. About 6 years ago, grandmother Flor de Mayo called me And she says, I've got a message. I've got to get this word out. So I'm just channeling what she shared with me here. And that is that the mandate she received was, and Grandmother Florida Mayo is one of the founding grandmothers, 13 indigenous grandmothers. And she's from Central America. And she said she was walking through the forest and she received this mandate that it is time to spread the word. The divine feminine is coming. It's the era of Ish, according to the teachings of the Mayan calendar. Ish comes around every 10 minutes, applauding, yay. That Ish comes around every 20 days on the calendar. That we're moving into the era of Ish. And Ish is a symbol on the Mayan calendar as of the divine feminine. But what was for me, what I'm thinking of, I'm looking back at all the things that we have done over the last 19 years at Sarah, and it was alive in me then. It was, you know, I woke up to the same thing. Everybody was seeing the morning of 9/11, you know, those airplanes flying into buildings, and that creative tension, that is the catalytic shock to the system that says something's got to happen. And it's always the divine feminine that shows up. How are we going to get creative? How are we going to synthesize? How are we going to synchronize? How are we going to organize? These are all feminine qualities that mothers do really well. That's just innate in women. We've got to protect the children. We've got to know where all the food is. We need to know what everybody is doing. We need to bring everybody together so everybody is well. And so that happened for us at Sarah. The morning of 9/11, I woke up and heard gather women. I didn't have any idea what to do with the women once I gathered them. I just said yes. And within a series of months, I had 12 women sitting in my living room and Sarah was born. And it came very naturally to us to conform to our highest and our deepest value system, because that was what we were stepping over the threshold to do, show up as women of our faith traditions, of our diverse faiths. So naturally, women were showing up in that frequency of trust and love and hospitality and all of those divine feminine qualities that I'm seeing men show up in more and more. So it is definitely, we've cleared that it's not a gender thing, although women embody it more naturally. It's just part of our biological makeup. It's the release of hormones. It's the release of our biological imperative nature to respond in this way. So yes, women are highly responsible for making sure that we are holding the space, not only for ourselves and in the room that we are in, and standing up in our power with our shoulders back and a clarity of what we're there to accomplish with unapologetically, but also that we raise our children in that way, and that we pick partners that support us in that way, and that we hold each other accountable. So there are 4 essential elements at Sarah that we hold very dear. The first is circle principles. We know that solutions happen in circles, and we need a safe container when we meet. And that's the container we've always met in, whether it's in homes or on Zoom. And when we're meeting in circle, we have circle principles. It's, you know, just, and you can go to our website and find those circle principles, but basic how to conduct and the protocol for being in circle and respectful conversation with one another. The next is financial wholeness. We have got to stop apologizing for asking to get paid for our wisdom and our intelligence. This is good work. This is something that's come with a lot of experience and time and energy. And we also know that when people pay even just a small amount, they show up. And so there's a value exchange there. It's an exchange of currency. So financial wholeness, circle principles. And the next is agreements for care and caregiving. Holy cow. This element could not be the hardest one to follow through with, but we're committed. We hold true to it. It is hard for us, and we consider ourselves experts at this, but it's how are we being with one another? We've seen organizations fall apart because of personal issues, because we all show up in passion and compassion. We all show up with these grand, beautiful, glorious ideas, but somebody always leaves, upset, or because they're so passionate about this, they don't feel heard. So rather than knowing the rules for how we care and agreeing to that in advance, are really essential. And they're so easy to follow, but they're so hard. It's so hard to remember the simplest things. And I will share with you right now that this wisdom came to me out of necessity. And it was a gift from a friend of all of ours, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr. And he imparted on me when I was in leadership in another organization that he was also a part of, when things were getting a little sticky and difficult in that personal relationship, because we have to bring this down. We're going to shift the culture if we are going to make a difference, if we are going to midwife feminine divine values. We have got to live them in our behavior, especially and always when it's not convenient and comfortable. And so this protocol for reconciliation is what Hereditary Chief Phil gave me, and we applied them to our leadership. So you can find those there too, and you'll find them very easy and simple to read, but try applying them when the time comes. And it's not so easy, but that is, I think, one of the biggest contributing factors to our success after 19 years. And the last is recognizing our ecosystem of our interdependence. And we use the Beijing 12 critical areas of concern. These are UN efforts. They're like the Sustainable Development Goals, but they're for women specifically and by women. And there are 12 critical areas of concern in the Beijing Action Platform. And all of this is housed in the General Congress of Women, our big initiative at SARA. But those are the 4 essential elements that we think are necessary. I have experienced in our success in moving forward. And yeah, I know I believe I might be out of time here, but I just want to thank you again for holding this space, because we can, there couldn't be a more important conversation to have. And Antoinette, I love that your name refers to the root, the mother root, the divine mother root, because that's where we have to go. That's what's happening right now. The soul of our world is crying for our attention. And she is asking for us to get uncomfortable with our actions. Yeah, so thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. And, as...
Oh, just one thing.
Oh,
Sandy,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Sandy, I really love that how you brought up the Mayan calendar, because, and that's a really feminine thing as well, too, as far as the cosmic mind that Luigi and I study within the Urantia book. And when 2012 was coming up and happening, this is the time when we first met Ben Bowler, and we started to work with him during that time. The Mayan calendar, everybody thought we were going to die. It's like this is the end of the world in 2012. But Pato has said, according to, the age of the Aquarius, this is the time of the age of the women. Women are going to move into political positions, social positions, spiritual positions in power. This is the time. And during these last few years, I've noticed there's been a significant change already. And even when you said it's like you got this message to sit there and introduce everybody to the divine, I got the same message too. I was in Japan. It was a circle of women, Urantia women, they call it the sisters of circles sharing and different stuff. And I was not into any of this before, and I was just learning. And then all these signs started coming while I was in Taiwan, in Korea, in the Philippines, in Japan, one after the other. I was like, wait a second. That's what prompted me to start the Daughters of the Divine Mother, to learn more about her and to sit there and say, this has got to become a mission of mine, to share, who she is and how impactful she is, and all throughout society. We have so much work to do. We have such a great mission. And I really love that you touched on those things, because I'm right there with you, even though we're apart. And when you mentioned the compassionate California, I just started having conversation with Laura, because we're trying to bring our city into the compassionate city as well, too. So I'm really excited, because it's like, here's women leading the charge, making things happen. And we actually can do this when we actually put them in charge, and the guys step back and just be supportive for a moment. Thank you.
Exactly. I totally agree. And I was also thinking about our dear friend Rian Eisler, who I know, Sandy, and I think most people on this probably know, but just to mention, she's the author of The Chalice and the Blade, which was a best-selling book. And I think it refers to that time that came up earlier before the agrarian age, where it was like goddess culture. And the thing that I want to mention about Marianne is that her analysis and work shows that it's patriarchy which actually led to all the many kinds of domination culture that we see today. So, with the inequality, financial inequality, and all of the slavery, and all of the things that we have today actually started with that one imbalance of men dominating women. So patriarchy led to that. And in fact, I know it came up a little bit talking about some of the religions. Many of the organized religions were founded in patriarchy. So we have, and it continues to this day. All the Abrahamic religions still have patriarchy as a foundation. Christianity, Islam, and
Judaism.
And Judaism.
It was the first. The Torah was the first to claim domination on women and degrade women. Of them all, of course, it was the first. And actually, Islam was not only the last, but they actually say more about women's freedom than any of the other texts. So
interesting.
That's important to point out. Yeah.
And I that's interesting because I think Jumana might want to talk about that too. So Jumana, when you were talking about film before, for me, the messages of the media become the fabric of our culture. And for me, film
Marshall
is
McLuhan. That's right out of Marshall McLuhan.
Yes, right. Very good, very good. So for me, film is like the top of the heap. A person can go to a theater, hopefully when the theaters open up again after this COVID, but a person could go to a theater and watch a film for 2 hours where they are stepping in the shoes of someone in a totally different culture or a totally different society, and then they have that experience for the rest of their life. So for me, film, the media is so important, and film is at the top. So anyway, saying all that, what would you like to comment on, Jumana?
Okay, well, I'm thrilled with how this conversation is going. All of the aspects of it, the feminine divine, film, and the socioeconomic structure. I have so much to say, but I'll just jump in on the film since you left with that, Rick. I'm finding that this idea of the feminine is coming into the culture of film and of religion in a way that happily surprises me in places where I don't expect it. Like, I will hear God referred to as she in a church, or in this very popular, just like that, just sliding it in, and this very popular TV series, Ted Lasso, now, if any of you have seen it, which the story of it is about football players, soccer players in England, and their coach tells them, woman up. And they're like, go, what? Do you mean man up? He said, no, we've been manning up all this time, and look where it has gotten us, woman up. So things like that really show that the culture is shifting. And yet, I'm belong to a community of filmmakers, and when I talk about the divine feminine, they go, what? So I tell them a little bit, and they say, is this a cult? And I say, no. So, and yet the big general culture is still blind to the idea that God is also goddess, and not only blind, but like scared of it. And for me, my first experience of the feminine divine was with Amma, the Hindu humanitarian and saint known as the hugging saint. And what is really extraordinary about Amma is that she functions purely in her feminine. You know, at Peace Lights, we do a lot of work around what is your authentic expression and what is your authentic creative expression. And when I saw how Amma functions, I was blown away. So Amma means mother in Hindu, and Amma calls the whole world her children, and she hugs and rocks and whispers sweet things in the ears of every person who comes to see her, like a mother would. A good mother, you know, because their mothers can also be very dysfunctional, human issues, and mothers are also a product of patriarchal society. So Amma functions as a mother, so she's sitting hugging everyone who comes to her. Meanwhile, she's running gigantic humanitarian organizations at the level of government in collaboration with governments, while she hugs and rocks her thousands of children who come to see her. Over here, she's running board meetings on Zoom nowadays, you know, and so they go like, and she's deeply involved in the details and the care of every organization that's run by her consortium. And then over here, she talks to people about their problems. Should I leave my job? Should I have surgery or not? So this way of multitasking and also and you know, running enormous enterprises while mothering doesn't exist before. That I know of, you know, and certainly is not the model in our culture for something successful. It's working at a scale that is phenomenal. And even the structure of that organization is feminine. It's like rhizomes. There is no pyramid. She's not the CEO or COO or anything. Things as a matter of fact, when you try to put their programs in a picture, it's really hard, because things happen as a rhizome in many different directions and independently, but with coherence to the principles and the heart of the organization, which is why, Sandy, it was so great to hear you articulate those principles that you work on in your organization. So Amma blew my world about what is possible and how it's possible to function. And so in my film work right now, I am working on a TV series in development of people who, not unlike any of us here on this panel, who on their own personal journey have discovered the feminine and the divine feminine, and who are just grappling with that and the disbelief around them of others who go like, what is this, a cult? Is this, come on, this is a joke? And how people just start to develop a different understanding where we can actually honor both the masculine and the feminine. Because I think, you know, nobody says that the masculine is not needed. Gosh, we need the pyramid, we need the domination. You don't want to, like, you know, run a ship in collaboration. You want to have a person who is in charge, you know. There's many situations where you want one person to dominate benevolently, hopefully, but you also want the nurturer and the circle and the collaboration, and to have the ability to articulate both and what's what and what's appropriate when is really what our century and our time is about, I believe.
Fabulous. And I'm glad you brought up Amma, because she is doing so many amazing things. And it's actually staggering, right? I think she's helped to lift, like, not just millions, like, I forget the number. Is it like 100 million people out of poverty or some gigantic number?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It's like mind-blowing, and we don't hear about her, which is perhaps, you know, a side effect of the non-hierarchical nature, you know, of her organization. Maybe, you know, because at least Western culture still values, you know, rugged individualism and who's leading the ship, who's steering the ship. And that's the whole focus, instead of the tremendous collaboration that makes the whole thing happen. So, and I am proud to say that in New York City, I stood online for about 7 hours. and about 3:30 in the morning, I got a hug from Amma. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was because you told me about that she was in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
We've
Too
gone
much.
together a couple of times. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
well, we've gone together, but there was one time
Where you
early, even
Yeah.
before that I actually got the hug. And it was like, life-changing experience. So, and I think she hugged like 50,000 people while she was in New York City. I mean, and running the organization, not running, but making that organization possible that you were talking about. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and she does run it, and because she cares about every detail, yeah, it's
And also you have worked very closely with her and her team. So I think it's important for people to know about that, and you as well. So,
I
thank
was
you.
an NGO representative for her organization, and I went to India, where she has programs all over the world, but in India is in Kerala, where she's from, is the main organization. And this is like a feminine detail. So I was going around to visit the programs because I was working on them at the UN. And we stopped at a gas station, and it had Amrita on it, which is one of expression of her name. And like, Amma has a gas station? I said, that sounds crazy. She said, yeah, we were spending too much money driving around. So she said, let's have our own gas station in a central area. So we'll actually make money on gas instead of spend money on gas. And, it's like incredible to think of. That's the level of detail where she's involved, but she's not running and from top down.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So yeah, go ahead, Luigi.
Yeah, if I may, I want to make a comment on a point that Sandy made that really resonated deeply with me, and that was the connection between healing the assault on women and healing the assault on the environment. I think in this cosmology of interconnectedness and interwoven everything, one of these issues does not exist without affecting the other. And there's no greater existential threat to humanity in general than this climate change thing that's bearing down our backs. We have evidence of it all around us in every country, whether you're on fire or whether you're in a flood or whether you're in a hurricane or whatever. But I wanted to relate this to a young goddess, Greta Thunberg. If ever the spirit was moving a young woman, it's this one. She has no fear of the flimsy authority of corrupt institutions, mostly run by men. She boldly presents her statement with all the confidence of the spirit of truth within her. And I just thought it was a great connection you made. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say this is also a running theme we've been talking about during many of these 11 Days of Global Unity Summit panels, the interconnection between each of these 11 themes. So the other day we were talking about the connection between health and the environment, and all of that, and children and youth and health and the environment. I brought up, we had a young man who was 18 years old who was, very interested in climate and the environment and working for a better world. And I asked him point blank, are you talking with your friends who may be interested in climate? Do they know about what's happening when they consume a hamburger, that the Amazon rainforest is being cleared to raise cattle, and that's affecting the climate, and industrialized agriculture in general is affecting the climate? And he said no, he didn't realize that. And I mentioned that in the 90s, at the highest point, the Amazon was being cleared at a rate, in 1 year, the size of France was deforested to raise cattle. So it's just something for people to understand, and that touches on all of these interconnections. So I just thought I'd mention.
And
No, when
another
you
argument.
had, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Antoinette.
well, when you had mentioned Greta, I don't know if you guys remember, but Deborah Maldo, she put us in touch with the people who are working with the Billion Acts of Peace. And this is with the youth working. It's like where the Nobel Peace Prize laureates were working with the youth as far as inspiring and encouraging to continue on with the works. So we met this young girl, and Pato did this video called Heal This World regarding the environment. So I don't know if you've seen the video, but you know that young girl named Madhvi? So when we just came back from our tour, our Peace and Love Good News tour, we met Madhvi out in Colorado. I said, Madhvi, I want you to speak to our audience of thousands of people about what you had just accomplished. This girl was 7 years old when she wanted to make a change for the environment. 7 years old, she wanted to ban single plastic use and styrofoam. And it was last year, so she'd been working on this for a long time. And last year, the governor of California said, all right, Plastic Awareness Day, but it's like we always have this awareness day, but what does Awareness Day actually do? But it was just a few months ago, that Awareness Day has now become law. The governor has signed into law banning single-use plastic and styrofoam. This is a child. When we got her up on the stage dancing with us, she's taller than me. She is 10 years old. But with determination, it's like the youth are going to sit there and lead the way, and it's an awesome interview. I'm going to be posting it because, she took it from an idea into lobbying, into legislation. And if a 10-year-old child who could do it from at the age of 7, then why can't anybody else do that? Out of the mouths of babes, a lot of powerful and beautiful things can happen. So yes, let's heal this world.
Well, what's that? You're reminding me of a Bible quote that says, men shall run to and fro, knowledge shall increase, and a little child shall lead them. And I always think of Greta when I remember that quote. I wanted to jump on the cheeseburger Amazon basin bandwagon a bit here. In addition to all the land that's being cleared just to raise cattle and all the methane they produce, that's a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, there is the fact that it takes 26 pounds of grain protein to produce 1 pound of beef protein. So think of the people you can feed with 26 pounds of grain versus 1 pound of beef. That's another part of this tragic inequality of what's going on here. I know Antoinette and I are both sworn carnivores.
Can I respond to something Jumana kind of led me into a condition of discovery I wasn't really thinking a lot about for this call, but it's a feeling I have, and I don't think I'm alone, in that when Jumana, when you were mentioning that, there are people that are questioning, is this for real? Are we really moving into this direction? And it dawned on me, we really don't need to or have to sell that this is coming upon us. It's something we know. It's something that's happening. And those who don't buy into it and who are contributing to the resistance. This is another thing I learned from Chief Phil. When an animal in the forest is dying, you can't help it. If you try to help it, it will buck, it'll die. There's always resistance to what is dying. And so that's what we're experiencing perhaps in all the, the critical levels of devastation that's happening right now. It's just the final push of the birth canal, and that's when I talk about not getting, you can't get comfortable. You can't just back out and say, oh, okay, I'm in the middle of giving birth and I'm just going to go sit this one out, or I'm going to, just do something that makes me feel convenient. Maybe you can get an epidural, but still in the end, there's still an awful lot of pain. And that's where we're at right now, is in that great tension. So it's going to be felt, and it's happening with or without us. And it's really quite glorious when you think about it. And I guess the best that we can do is to midwife it and, like the youth, get out of their way to some degree, but don't contribute to it. And I am so incredibly thrilled to hear that styrofoam is being banned in California. That's huge. That's like beyond huge, because I think that the impact on our environment that styrofoam alone has. the assault that the school systems, the schools, all the food that they serve on styrofoam every single day, and millions of kids. Gosh, this is such good news. So pay attention to the good news. A lot of appreciative inquiry. And thank you for mentioning Deborah Muldow, because she brings so much love and good wherever she is. So
She's awesome. The state is actually Colorado.
oh, Colorado.
Yeah, but once it, and this is a thing that I've learned about lobbying, because I started a lobbying class, which is actually going to be starting up next month again. And it's for anybody to learn about lobbying. But, mine is for a particular campaign called the Jane Campaign, and how the police respond to special needs and mental health issues, because it's a single mom. And I didn't want people to sit there and say, why do we always have to do these campaigns when they're gone and something happened to them? Let's be proactive in this stuff. So that lobbying thing is just something that everybody can learn. And it was inspired by this young girl, but also because of what the other works that other women were doing. So it's hosted by women. It's a free class for anybody who wants to learn about how they can actually make positive change. They can join us and go through hand by held steps, like lobbying 101, because if a child can do this, then anybody can do this. And one thing that I've learned, because they taught me, is that if you already have a law that's already set in one state, you can actually, you don't have to rewrite the entire law. You just take that same one and you present it in your own state. It's that simple. So Colorado is now passed. It's going to take a few years to actually implement it, but they did set a deadline. It'll be 2024, but it only passed a few months ago. But we can take that same law that she has already passed and had signed by the governor and take it to every single state and sit there and say, well, they've got it going on. Why can't we? There's no reason to stop that.
I think to answer your question, Karen and Rick, supporting women for a world that works for all is to everybody to go sign up for Antoinette's workshop, because if we're going to make change, it's going to take some learning to get into the system. We got to work the patriarchal system. We just can't pretend, oh, it's a dinosaur, and we're in the death throes of patriarchy. We are, but we still have to learn how to work it. And we still have to learn how to legislate. And that is the single most reason why a lot of change doesn't happen, is because somebody's waiting for someone else to do it. But when we can learn from somebody like Antoinette, or maybe apply the 4 essential elements, or look at the models of Alma and the interconnect, and look through the interconnected values that We the World promotes, and we can apply all of these elements together, and then have the power and the advocacy through legislation. We're unstoppable, and there's nothing more powerful than people in circle with the plan.
And the women who are the teachers, they've had bills passed nationally and locally and on the state level. And when you meet them, they're just so on fire. She said, it started with me just going to the school board and just letting my voice being heard. And I was like, wait a second, really? She said, you can reclaim your time. And if nobody else wants to speak, then get everybody else to sit there and give you your time, and you hold up that floor until you get your voice across, because they will listen if you sit there and just, keep at it and supporting. So I was like, what a wonderful gift that's offered out there. So we're going to start it up again. I just put the link inside there, and I'll also put it on there. It's a free course. It's a 3-course, and it's a hand holding. Any questions, we help you identify who your local people are. What are your passions? What are your interests? How to go about it, and a little work table. So, let's all get on board and make, positive change, from protest to policy.
Yep.
I'm going to put this out to all of Sarah. It's already done. I'll be there.
That sounds great. And I think there is a kind of a tension between these two dynamics. One is this shift that we're talking about is inevitable. And some people think, well, it is inevitable. And then the other side is, well, we have to actually step up, or it's not going to happen. And so that's an important question for me. And I think timing is really important, because if we don't make this shift in the next 5 years, let's say, we've been given a kind of a time limit by the IPCC and other groups that feel like that talk about the climate crisis and the mass extinction of species are going to reach tipping points and become irreversible unless we do something very strong and drastic, really, within the next 10 years. So we could say, yes, the shift is happening, but I think it's time for us to step up in so many different ways that we're talking about, like the lobbying and getting behind all of these campaigns, and through the media and beginning to shift the media. I always say, be the media. If you're not happy about what the mainstream media is doing, be the media yourself. And this is kind of what we're doing here, is we're being the media. What do you think, Jumana?
I think it's so important. Yes, I think it's really great. What an invention, the internet, that allows all of us to have our voices heard. And the work you're doing, Rick, with Rick and Karen, with We the World, gathering voices, gathering forces, putting them out there is phenomenal. Yeah, we the media. Love
We
that.
the media, be the media, we the media, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I always say, you know, there's been this slow, you know, evolution of the media. First, it was like important to be independent media, right? Independent of corporate influence and money influence. Yes, we, you know, all of these independent media companies springing up, like Democracy Now! And, you know, all these groups trying to be independent of financial corruption, really. But now I think it's important for us to move into the next era of interdependent media, where there are media companies that work together. And we're doing that now with Kurt Johnson talks about this all the time, with Light on Light magazine and Convergence Radio, this idea of a coalition of media companies that are conscious media and working together and supporting each other to expand our audiences so we can make this cultural shift towards what we call we consciousness, right? Where the well-being of each and every member of society, including non-human members of society, is considered essential to the well-being and survival of the whole. Karen, what do you have to say?
Well, yeah, the living beings, every living being being treated, as I said, when we did the heart and brain coherence, in the web of love, knowing that every strand is just as important as every other strand, and that the web cannot be completed without every strand, and every strand needs to be heard. I want to go back to where we started at the very beginning, where we talked about these young girls who have had sexual assault and were in these terrible experiences where they were trusting their predator. And I am a survivor of rape, and I am also a survivor of domestic abuse. And I know how those children feel. I know what that feels like, to have somebody that you trusted, that you loved, that you thought loved you, do something that is so incredibly assaultive and violent. And that's why I think it's so important. And I didn't have the courage at the time to report it. And so I came back afterwards and reported it years later, because I knew that it needed to be reported. And this is why it's so important, I feel, that I'm so passionate about working with children and teenagers, because this happened to me when I was a teenager, and I didn't have the confidence or the voice to speak. And so that's why I'm so honored to see that these girls are coming together and speaking together. And it's so important that we look at what we've been hiding from, and we start talking about, how is it that a little girl like myself, or a teenage person, is thinking that they are ashamed of the fact that they have been assaulted? This is our community. This is the society that we raise our children in, and we need to look at this so that we can prevent it for the next generation. Now, my daughter is 25 years old. She would never allow anybody to disrespect her. She has a very powerful voice in the way that she presents herself, and she sees herself as an equal with all men. She works in an environment with many men, and she does not have any situations where she's had any kind of situation like that. So I think this is why I've gone in the schools for 20 years, because I feel like we have to speak out, and we have to create a space where children feel safe to share their emotions and their feelings so that they can navigate and express themselves. So that's what I feel about this conversation. I love what Luigi brought in. I love that he brought in that the history of where it all began. I know that my grandmother and my mother are products of domestic abuse also. And so it's a cycle. And it's something that we need to break. I broke it with my daughter. I did. I know I did. And I feel that that's what we need to do for all children, and all children all over the world, especially children who are challenged financially. They need to be totally empowered financially. We need to look, and that's why Sandy and I have been so close and working together for so many years for women and girls. Because if we empower girls and women and young children, and we teach them, like Antoinette said, equality, we start with that. We start with that basis of having equality in the school system. It needs to be in the school system. You know, I mean, we're taught like in a silly way that boys pull your hair and that means he likes you. And he's kicking your chair and he's hitting you and he likes you. And we're taught that that is okay. And we need to stop that. We need to completely stop that conversation. And I feel like I have, because I've been having this conversation in the schools for many years. And I feel in my own society, in my own little corner of the world, we've been able to really stop a lot of violence because of education. I'd love Antoinette to share.
I just really want to compliment you about, because the work that you're doing with the young girls is so important, and especially with your daughter. And I really feel it's so important to empower the young girls. After we came back from the tour, all these little young girls was just running after me. They wanted a picture, an autograph, or they liked the words that I said. And I was like, wow, nobody ever like comes after me. They always go after Pato. But something you said is why it's so needed to be heard, because if they hear it young. Last night, my husband and I watched that whole hour-and-a-half video of the police stop of Gabby Pettit. Now, I don't know if you saw the same thing that I've seen. It's about the young girl who was missing after her and her boyfriend went on the road trip. I watched that for an hour-and-a-half, and the entire time, the guys, the cops, 4 of the cops are standing there laughing and chuckling, and even the guy asking them what's happening, they're all smiling. I'm telling you, if you just watch it, people just don't understand these little things, how important that is. While she's sitting in the back of the police car, bawling, obviously distraught, you know, because they're saying, oh, she goes, but why did you scratch him? Because he called me crazy. I think most guys already know, never call a woman crazy, you know, so even if she did scratch you, whatever, she's, you know, 5 feet, 110 pounds, 5.5. But the way those guys was laughing and chuckling, yeah, I know, yeah, you know, she did whatever, and so like that. And the attitude of these 4 police officers as males, and then they just took his word as whatever, you know, and then when they went over there to talk to the young girl who's crying, you assaulted him, you did this to him, it's like, wait a minute, how did, you know, obviously, you know, whatever happened that went on, why is she not given the same treatment that they were giving him? You know, why is that? And that's actually, we see this in everyday aggression about like, and I've done this even when I'm on the road where guys are talking, I said, listen, and as sound man, I said, you don't talk to him because the musicians come to me. I'm the one in charge of this band. You don't talk to him. They're like, talk to Antoinette. The man is looking over my head, trying to talk to my subordinate. I said, you talk to me in my face. This is what I'm telling you, how we're going to do this. And it's just so weird. It may be easier for me, but I really want to get that fire and empower these young women to also stand up for themselves as well, too. Speak your mind, speak your truth. Don't let anybody trample upon you. Don't let nobody disrespect you, because that is just unfortunate to sit there and watch and witness what happened. You know, regardless of the outcome with this missing girl, the whole thing, if it was him that actually hurt her or did whatever because of some argument or something, the thing is that they automatically took his side from the get-go.
Yeah.
Amen. I love thank you, Antoinette. That's so important. And I just love, I felt the power in me when you said, this is how it's going to work. You're going to look at me. I mean, it's that shift of energy. It's that shift of energy of being of being in your power. And it's that, you know, it's available to all of us. Karen, I know that you also work, when you go into schools, you're working with the children, you're working with the boys too. And we can't say enough about not leaving the boys behind. We're doing so much, there's so much work being done on behalf of girls, and it's so necessary that they be brought up to know their power. But boys also need to know that they too are valued, and that they don't, this machoism crap is just, you know, it's part of the patriarchy that has just got to die. And studies show that we're leaving our boys behind in school, that their grades are dropping, that their behavior is worsening. And so, you know, I think it's important also, you know, we have Dr. Marty K. Casey coming to our call on our General Congress of Women call. I know she's a friend of the We Network. And she was talking to us, we had this little pre-call, and she was talking to us about the power of listening, taking time in. You know, and I just thought, isn't that nicer than sending somebody and punishing them, and saying taking time out? And it reminds me, so many schools are doing a lot of mindfulness, right? But taking time in is such a nicer way of saying, go inside and examine, you know, where that, let's say it's machoism is coming from, or where these feelings are coming from, and to really honor boys for their sensitivity and for those feminine qualities in boys. And I'm going to give a shout out to my friend, Clay Boykin too, who is the founder of Circles of Men, and who's one of the men holding that space. I'm complete, Jumana.
Okay.
Oops. Just
Yeah,
to
go
continue
ahead.
what Sandy was saying, to honor the boys for their masculinity and the men for their masculinity as well, because I see a lot of the source of confusion for young boys is that, you know, machoism has been made bad, and it is bad, but masculinity has come in the mix as well. So, you know, like I have a 23-year-old son, he likes to play football and beat on his friends. They like it too. Okay, fine. You know, he's competitive, and he, you know, when he was younger, it's like, Mom, is it bad to be competitive? It's not bad to be competitive. That's your nature. Be competitive. Just keep in mind the whole and in service of the whole. So I think our young boys have gotten very, very confused, our men too. And that's part of the work we do at Peace Lights, is try to explain and catalog and describe, these are the masculine values, they're important. These are the feminine values, they're important. Now we know that each of us has two in us. Some are more feminine, some are more masculine, but we need both. You know, it's a pendulum thing. Our pendulum right now is in a funny place where women and feminine is still devalued, but also the masculine has been shamed. So we're making our way to where hopefully both forces can be expressed in goodness, you know.
Yep. So as we wind up, Jumana, do you want to let people know how people can find out more about Peace Lights and any other contact? And we can kind of go around and just people give how people can connect with
Great.
you all.
So you can go on our website, peacelights.org. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. And you can also email me at info@peacelights.org and tell me if you're interested in collaborating in the film work or in the emotional education world. When COVID is over, we'll start doing events again. So stay in touch, be in touch, and stay in touch.
Okay, Antoinette? How do people connect with you and your work?
All right, so I put a couple links in the chat here, but I'll also put it onto the Facebook live streams as well. And while we're sitting here, I'd like to invite Karen again, because last time we was in Santa Barbara and we did a festival, I did have Nancy with her Music for Children, you know, offering free scholarships for the youth. So if I have a few minutes on the show, we're gonna be up there October 2nd for Oktoberfest. There's going to be thousands out there as well, too. So it would be a great chance, you know, for you to be able to share your platform with the local residents of the work that you're doing, you know, with the children and the youth, because there was so many kids there and they just don't know that these opportunities, or even educators, that they have these programs available offered to them. So I'm inviting you there October 2nd. So I can be found at standupforjustice.us. That is my racial justice organization. And that's where we're going to be offering the free lobbying courses in class. And this is for anybody, whether you want to lobby for the environment, whether you want to lobby for women's rights, whatever it is, there's still just one basic formula that you can start from and go forward from there. And these are wonderful instructors that will handheld you and work you through. I dropped my music link in the page, which is Antoinette Roots Data Bandcamp with my 3 albums. And I actually have Lishan here. I don't know if you remember her from the New York Convergence, but her and I are working on doing Daughters of the Divine Mother album. I'm doing an entire album on that, dedicated to the divine. And it's with the poem was written by a man named Mingshan. He's a spiritual leader, but his view of the Divine Mother was so powerful. She's singing it and chanting it, and then I'm playing the music. So I love how it's like the allies can come together in collaboration to sit there and bring oneness of humanity that we're all striving towards one. So that's and what we're gonna do next month is gonna do a live meditation and recording all at the same time. Everybody will be able to join in. We're gonna take you on a journey to be in this meditation while we do this live and while it's being recorded at the same time. So that's gonna be amazing. And then of course, the Jane campaign, now we are getting started because like I said, mothers of autistic children, you know, mothers of autistic children, mothers of special needs, mother of mental health crisis and stuff. If we do not wait until they actually become a hashtag or a face on a t-shirt, we can proactively get involved now. So the title of that is called the Jane Campaign, you know, and this is how you could work this locally on state level or within your own community, is that we're trying to look out and be there for each other. I'm not a mother of an autistic child, but I can feel and sense what would happen if that were my child, you know, so we all have to be there for each other. Thank you.
Exactly. And Luigi, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I posted a link to my sculpture website, but the truth is I'm not that active in terms of groups and lobbying and rallies and things like that. However, I consider myself an educator, and I've dedicated a lot of my YouTube channel to climate change awareness. And this is a subject I have thrown myself at, just dove right into it, and have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours of my own time educating myself on this. And the fantasy was to put together a voiceover slideshow presentation and take it to where I live in the country here in northern New Hampshire, local public libraries, and give this presentation. And the more I got into this, the presentation was so long. There was so much material here that it just simply wasn't going to work, you know, to hold an audience for 4 hours. So I decided to chop it up into bite-sized, digestible bits and say, okay, now we're dealing with the loss of Arctic sea ice, or now we're dealing with melt ponds and moulins on the surface of Greenland or something. And I have a series, even have a playlist on my YouTube channel where this is something I really espouse. But I want to back up to something, Rick, you had said earlier about, even if you buy into a current theory that we're past all the tipping points, climate change is irreversible and inevitable, and we're all going to go extinct in a few years. Even if you buy into this, we are still constrained to do what the Buddhists call right action. And everyone has to determine what right action is for themselves. I can't tell you. But part of doing right action, even if you know the cause is hopeless, is divorcing yourself from its consequences, from the results. The Urantia book says the action is ours. the consequences gods. So I really like this Buddhist philosophy. And by the way, I learned from a climate scientist about we're still constrained and compelled to take right action. We can't just sit in front of a TV and throw in the towel and say, well, I'm going to wait to go extinct today. That's not it. We're better than that.
Okay, and Sandy, how do people get in touch with you, the Congress of Women and Sarah and everything?
I just put the links in the chat window here. Sarah for Hope is spelled SARAH, the number 4, hope.org. And from there, you can get to all of our events under workshops and events or initiatives. And the General Congress of Women we have coming up on Tuesday with Marty K. Casey and Grandmother Sasa, and every one of our 12 calls, and this is our 9th call being September, we have an Indigenous elder or grandmother hold sacred space, open and close, hold sacred space, share her wisdom. So this month, the conversation is on women, war, and armed conflict. And Dr. Marty is coming to talk to us about that. And Grandmother Sasa will speak with her Indigenous wisdom on that topic. And then all voices are heard on all of our calls. We have coming up the Alchemy of Women's Compassionate Action. This is something we do in advance of the last 2 parliaments and in advance of the UN Commission on the Status of Women while we're in New York. And this is a gathering of women to anchor our voice, to strengthen our voice, to be in circle, in sacred circle. There's a water ceremony. There's dialogue, circle conversations. There's inspirational speakers, Rabbi Teresa Firestone and Grandmother Flor de Mayo and Jean Shinoda Bolin are 3 of our speakers right off the top of my head. We have bubble baths for the soul that happen about every 2 weeks. Those are for women only. And just a lot of ongoing programs. Our ambassadors are the heart line of our organization. They are the fire. They bring the fire to Sarah and the creativity, and we operate in those sacred principles of the 4 essential elements. So you can always bet that we're going to do so. And it has to be fun. We have to be having fun, which we do. We have a lot of fun, but we're also going to be sending everybody to that, to Antoinette's class. So I'm speaking of fire. I'm on fire right now. Thank you. I love we, the world. I love we.
Exactly.
Love us,
And
we're we.
exactly. And Karen, you're going to be doing probably in October the monthly networking meeting, right?
Yes, yeah.
For
And,
women and allies.
Right, we do that the 3rd week of the Thursday of the month, and that's an opportunity for any new partners or partners that have been with us to share and shine their light. And I'm also the spokesperson for Peace Pals International, so internationalpeacepals.org. What I've been working on is creating a character, a peace pal inside to help do through meditation, mindfulness, and understanding, teaching children that they have a peace pal inside or an inner critic or an inner judge inside, and which voice are they listening to? And that can, I believe, can really, really change our patterns of violence and our patterns of just not being kind to each other. The whole month of October is also Bully Prevention Month. And so, yeah, the best way people can connect with me is Karen Palmer at wetheworld.org, and reach out to me if you'd like to be a partner in the Women, Allies, and Families. We have a wonderful women's conversation, a sacred conversation this afternoon that will be run by Aurora Pagonis and Janet Grace. I'm going to try and be there also, but it's going to be a wonderful conversation about how we can have sacred conversations and how we can communicate better with each other.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I think we've accomplished what we always want to accomplish on all of these events and broadcasts with We the World, to inspire, inform, and involve. 3 I's that make a we. So we can go from a me society to a we society. Thank you all so much.